Hi there. My name's Tommy Yionoulis, and I am the host of the brand new podcast, Empire Builders, Scaling Success One Location at a Time. This is a podcast dedicated to talking to the founders and the current leadership of those large multi-location brands that you see every single day where you eat and shop at. And we want to find out from these guys, why this business, right? Why of all the things you could do in the world, you chose to do this? We're going to learn what their challenges were at the beginning, what almost broke them. We're going to learn what they're facing today. And as always, we're going to end the show with a wonderful war story. That's one of those stories where you go, I can't believe we got through this. It was insanity, and hopefully they always end with a nice little laugh. So I can't tell you how excited I am to bring you these interviews with these amazing guests and just stoke that entrepreneurial flame that we all have to learn what it took to kind of get where they are today and how they got successful. So thank you for joining us, and I look forward to sharing these wonderful interviews with you. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Empire Builders. I'm Dave Hansen, our guest today. Dave, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tommy.
Oh, of course, man. Thank you for being here. The format of this podcast is we ask the same 5 questions of every guest. First question is, Dave, tell us about your current job and tell us about your company.
Sure. I'm the CEO of a company called ClientTether. We're the leading franchise CRM for franchise development, unit operations. Been around a decade. Founder's got crazy amount of background in the industry, has founded multiple large brands, and so infuse that into tech. And CEO, I'm leading sales and operations, and kind of everything rolls into me. But really, sales and marketing is what I focus most of my energy on.
Cool. And so, talk about, I guess, real quick. We'll talk about the CRM today, but let's talk about some of the brands that you worked on in the past, just so people have an idea about that.
Yeah, sure. So I led sales organizations in the language industry, translation services. So in what language, Multiling, which has been acquired since then, has a new name. I worked in product management, led a team for an organization that's part of the Pearson family of brands, a huge $9 billion company. I was part of that. Industry was EdTech certifications. Then been in sales a lot. So my first job ever, I started selling when I was 5, going door to door. Got in trouble for that. So I've always kind of had that in my blood, but mostly high-end software sales. Took a small stint out of technology and did manufacturing for a small group that was local to me. Didn't enjoy that as much. Got right back into tech. So I've been in pretty much tech and sales management for 20-something years now.
Oh, wow. And then with your product, so your client is a franchisor who is looking to sell franchises to individuals. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've got 2 main audiences, both in franchising. The franchisors that are looking to improve their franchise award rate, their franchise sales. We're really good at that, and we've only been doing that for 5 years. For 10 years, we've been at the unit level. Any service brand, primarily home service, pet, elderly care kind of brands, they need help to respond to leads immediately across multiple channels. They need help to get proposals out and close deals and collect payments and book jobs and follow up and get reviews. Like we've been doing that for over a decade now.
Oh, okay. So like I because like you'll go on Yelp or something and you'll go, hey, I want to find 5 plumbers in my area, right? And then literally there'll be a guy who calls you back in 8 seconds. You know what I mean? Like you hit submit and then you get a guy. So essentially your platform would be for that plumber, and that plumber would be there. How do I transform this potential phone call into a client and a booked appointment, essentially?
Correct. And then once you show up on site for the booked appointment, go through the process of building out the bid for the project, scope the work, we've got a proposal platform. They scope that, they build it. Then they say, hey, customer, here's the quote, here's the terms and conditions, here are the pictures I took. Does it look good? If so, let's get you on the schedule. We got a tight schedule. The kitchen table closed, right? That's optimal. And then if not, they push a button, bloop, and they send the proposal, like, I need to look at it with my wife. Whatever that process is. They hit a button. It sends them a beautiful proposal with, customer testimonials and videos about the company, like whatever you want, and then the price, and then they can sign it at home, which then triggers a follow-up and then lets you know, and then you can then, follow up with a call and then schedule the time to come out and deliver service. So the system kind of helps you from end to end, that customer journey. After this, another gap for most companies in their process. After service is delivered, you need to automate the follow-up to get a review and to ask for referrals and to cross-sell services and to check back up on them, make sure they're happy, and to ask them for referrals again in 6 months. Like, you should be all over your customers, especially if there's an opportunity or recurring service or a cross-sell or upsell. And that's if you've got anything like that in your brand, you need a platform that's going to automate it.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's so many, like, that's always the frustration. Like, I think the biggest frustration with contractors is, and they just need to be upfront about it, is like, hey, I've got a job this morning and I'm coming to you in the afternoon. But as everybody here knows, they dig into the wall, they dig into the pipe, they start working on something, and then they find 15 other things that are wrong. And so they can't just leave. They've ripped the whole thing apart, and now they're going to be late, right? Or they're not going to make it that day. And so that kind of communication, that I think that's super frustrating, when contractors kind of disappear on you or they don't show up, because, a lot of times I work from home, but a lot of people don't. They have to come home to let the guy in, whatever. But two, it's that lack of like professionalism. And it's not that they're not professional. It's that they don't have time to sit down and bang out a bunch of follow-up emails and stuff. Like, they need a system like yours that will automate it out. You set the workflow up one time, and then you're going to get the review. You're going to set up that 6 month, hey, let's come back and take a look at your $100 appointment, and we'll just come through and just double check everything, catch it before it breaks type of situation. That's really great. All right. So having said that, that's the first question. Second question is, why this business? Why contractors, right?
Yeah, we have an opportunity. We can work in any industry with the technology we've built. And the reason why we focused on this one is because not just franchising, right? Because franchising is not an industry. I mean, we say it is, but it's actually a cross section of every industry, really. But there's a unique need that's not being met in the cross section of FranDev, in franchising, but also unit operations, like the home service oriented industries that are heavily lean into leads a lot to build their business. Anybody in that category that's also a franchise has a unique problem that all the other CRMs and tools out there can't address. Tools like Jobber and House Call Pro Workies, they're good tools if you're a stand in a van. They try to work in franchising by building like really kludgy back-end things, but they actually don't have the architecture to support a parent organization, the franchisor, and then each franchisee has its own subordinate organization that's related to the parent. Salesforce can't do it. HubSpot can't do it. Zoho can't do it. They build baling wire and duct tape mountains to try to get that done, hundreds of thousands of dollars and months and months and months of delays. And then they say they do it, and it's just a bunch of wraparound, reach around your elbow to scratch your back code, where out of the box we do it. And so we just realized we're better than everybody at this in the space. And we also have the best. The thing that attracted me to the company, when the founder, he's a friend of mine, he's like, hey, help me run this company. I need your help. Was the fact that he had better sales automation than anybody, and he'd built it himself. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I actually told him he couldn't do what he could do when he told me what it did, and he just looked at me like, what are you talking about? So I looked at his platform, I was like, crap, he can automate an email and a text and a phone call. No one can still automate phone calls like we do, and few can still automate text messages. Most of them, it's third-party add-ons that bolt onto their platform because they can't do it out of the platform. They can just trigger it from a third party. That's kind of unique, and it's the highest demand tool you can get to build your business or improve your franchise development. So when I saw it, I kind of fell in love with it, and then I took the reins and started running the company 6 years ago, because I could see that in this landscape, there's nothing like it. And it's also an underserved marketplace with weak tools or expensive tools that don't do the job. So really good opportunities for us.
Absolutely. That's cool. Okay. So then question number 3, what were some of the initial early challenges that you guys faced?
Well, it goes back to what we just talked about, focus. The biggest challenge most companies have is a lack of focus. In fact, the company had been around for 5 years before I took it over, 4.5. And there was really no sales and marketing. It was just they were building, and people were buying it and asking about it. It's all referral based, organic stuff. The challenge they had is they had attorneys on the platform, and they had doctors trying to use it, and dentists, and like anybody could use it. And that was the first thing I did, say, no. Where are we better than everybody in the world? It's Jim Collins, right? Good to great. Like, it's a legitimate process. Like, what are we better than everybody in the world at, where we can consistently deliver better than average service? And it was franchising. So focus was problem one. And then it was a small company. There were 3 main employees and a developer when I got here. That's not a big company. And so resources were tight, trying to figure out how do we scale without big budgets, because we're self-funded. And a lot of people listening are probably self-funding an empire, right? So it was about, where do we put every effort? It was return on effort and return on investment. And most people just talk about ROI. You got to focus when you're small on ROE. Like, if I put an hour into something today, what's going to yield the best result for the company? Is it going to be pounding the phones and making outbound calls? Is it going to be building an actual strategy that we can execute and create scale with? So that's where I think a lot of founders struggle. And it was hard for me too, because you got to, hunt for rabbits to eat while you're searching for the elephants. So that's kind of the balance I think that was challenging, is ROE, making sure I was getting enough return on the effort putting in, because there's only 24 hours a day. I got to sleep sometime, and sometimes we push the limits, but it's getting the ROE focus. That's what helped us the most.
Sure, absolutely. All right, so then what are your big challenges today? Like, what are you dealing with today?
Yeah, very different set of challenges. We're blessed with the new challenges, right? Part of it's been like staffing up as we build and scale, being able to, we're pretty white glove, like we're hands-on. We have, all domestic success partners that help our clients deploy, and we train them, and we'll actually take the training off the plate of the franchisor because they're not great at it for technology. So we put our people in who are experts, and we do it. And so trying to make sure that as we scale, we're still delivering the same level of service that people have come to expect. Like our top lead source is still 10 years later referrals, even though we now do digital marketing stuff we didn't used to do, because of the way people get treated, the experience they have with us. So the last thing I want is, we're scaling, is for the scales to tip and all of a sudden the experience to drop off. That's hard. It's just real hard to manage, I'll be honest with you. And we've stumbled a little bit, but I think we're actually on pace now to keep it up. But we had to figure out the right way to create scalability with the humans, because everybody in tech is always like, video library, here's your walkthrough tech. And they try to get humans out of it. I'll keep doing it, boys. Like, I appreciate you helping us be more different than everybody else, but it is hard to scale that. So which is why I know, why they do it, because private equity demands that of them. Create scale with less cost, and we've found a way to do it with humans still.
Well, and the reality is that what we found, because we have a software company too, we're bootstrapped and we work in the franchise space as well. But what we found is that, like, if you leave it up to the client to implement the solution, they'll never get it off the ground. It'll become shelfware and they'll cancel 6 months later. So you're better off charging them an implementation fee, but then delivering them a turnkey. So like, what they're paying for, the implementation fee, is a turnkey solution. Here you go. You're all set up. All your current clients are in there. Everything you wanted in there is in there. It's configured properly. Here you go. And then, roll it out. And then as you add new people, this is how you do it. And then we're here to support you on the back end. Because if you don't do that, like, here's the thing that everyone forgets. And it's kind of like when you're looking for a job, right? When you're looking for a job, you send your resume out and you have an interview and you go, why hasn't that guy called me back yet? And what you forget is that person that hiring you or hiring that position is one of 10,000 things that guy's got to do. But it's the biggest thing for you. It's the only thing you have to do is get a job, because you're looking for a job, right? It's the same thing with these companies. Like, we forget that a lot of times the person that's buying this platform, who has been tasked to do this is one small part of a bigger job that they have to do every day. And so because it's new, they might be frustrated that it's new. They might be apprehensive because they don't know the platform, whatever it is. They can very easily just get out of doing it. You know what I mean? Like, so we've seen that so many times at the beginning. If we didn't take the reins and like hold them down and go, we're doing this for you. You just sit back and tell us what you need. And then, we'll get it done. It wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm. No, you're spot on. And it's the most overlooked part of technology, and it's especially important in franchising, right? So we both work in that space with technology, and people look at franchisors and they're like, oh man, Wendy's, they've got to be, they're doing so well. But if you look at corporate staff, like everyone in this industry, I'm not talking about Wendy's alone, I'm talking about every franchisor is surprisingly understaffed, right? And it's because, to become royalty independent means you're operating lean. And then the franchise owners don't recognize that either. And they're like, well, I pay you a royalty fee of $300 a month. I need 30 hours a week of your time. You're like, bro, like it's not reality. And so franchisors don't have an implementation team for technology. Even if the big ones, they don't. They're lucky to have technology resources, let alone resources that know how to train and deploy on software. So we just found that in order to be successful, like you're saying, you got to take that off their plate. What are they good at? Let them stay good at that. And then what should you be great at? Then you be great at that for them. And they'll pay you for it because they don't have the time and effort available to put in to becoming an expert and training on the software at the same time.
Well, and I would also tag on to that the other thing that people don't realize too, and I don't know if you run into this as much as we do, but depending on the FDD or the franchise agreement and how their world is set up, franchisors don't mandate as much stuff as everybody thinks they do. Like there's some like McDonald's where they wrote their franchise agreement in such a way where they can mandate what they want, but most of them don't like to mandate stuff down into the business. One, because when they mandate something and it doesn't work, then they have to hear about it for the next 25 years. I think two is because this really changed, right? Of course, when we started this business, that Obama era labor relations board thing where the government's been trying to make it so that the franchisors are responsible for the franchisees so that they can nail them and make them pay for healthcare and, just whatever it is, unionization, all this stuff. So like that actually happened in like 2015 when we started our business. And it was like, you got to be kidding me, because it really did take a lot of the franchisors were like, no, we're taking our hands off. We're only going to mandate the bare minimum amount of stuff. And we're going to leave it up to the franchisees to figure it out, which means you can go sell Taco Bell, but you might not actually get any business out of it. Like you got to prove to be in Taco Bell, but now you got to go market to each individual franchisee. And yes, there's some big ones that have 250 or 500 locations, but there's a lot of 2-unit guys,
Yeah, no, you're right. It's funny because, and I don't want this to be political, other than the people that are making these decisions are pure politicians that have zero business sense. And they don't understand. It's just like raising the minimum wage up in California. What they did is they increased their unemployment rate, right? Because the owners are like, I still have the same amount of dollars coming in, which means now I have to go find a robot or I have to stretch people and have fewer people on shift so I can afford to pay the bill to have a profit. Like they don't think about the impact, but trying to deconstruct franchising, one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because franchisors have to pull away from stuff that they were providing better service before, and they can't do some of the same things they used to do because the joint employer has gotten so aggressive. They're trying to find reasons to shut down franchising. Well, guess what? It's a tool to build independence and wealth away from government systems. That's why people hate franchising. The highest number of minorities, successful minority-owned businesses are coming through franchising. If that's not a great process, if that's not a great system, show me a better one. But there are certain people that don't like that because it's building independence and wealth outside of government dependence. And there's a certain group of people that hate that. And that's why I think franchising has been under the gun. But that was political. I did say I wasn't going to be political, and then I went there. So it drives me nuts.
And it's not political to say that was a Obama era rule that the National Labor Relations Board did. It was during like the last couple, it was like 2015 when they like released that rule that like basically made the franchisors pull back. And the the people who have suffered are us, the consumers. Because when the franchisors were able to execute a little bit more control over their franchisees, you had better experiences at the stores. Because, you know, not all franchisees are created equal. Some are better than others. And when they had a little bit more of a thumb on them and could kind of go, hey, you got to make that clean. You got to up your game and get that, you know, that standard up or whatever it is. You got to execute better. When they could kind of do those things, we as the consumer had a better experience, right? And I've worked with great franchisors, and I worked at Quiznos, so that's not a great franchisor. But I was at Quiznos back like at the tippy top of the 5,000 locations, and then on the way sort of going back down the mountain. I was there for that. And then we have clients that are some of the best franchisors and franchisees in the industries. And then we got some that are not so good too, you know. It's interesting. But yeah. And I totally agree with what you said. I mean, if you're trying to build wealth and you want to own your own business, your best bet is going to be to become a franchisee of a really good brand, right? You got to go do your research. There's a lot of franchise brands that are not well run, that where a franchisor wins and the franchisee loses. That was Quiznos. At the time, I don't know that it's that way today, but at the time it was. But if you're surely looking to like grow, like make yourself rich, if you can get in with one of these good franchise companies, one of the Yum brands, you know, some of these other McDonald's, whatever, like the big top, the best franchise brands, you can make a fortune. I mean, you can literally, I mean, I've got a guy, he's the son of the founder, or maybe the grandson. They own 250 Taco Bells and Pizza Huts. They're probably an over $300 million a year annual revenue business. They've literally used those Pizza Huts and Taco Bells to build entire strip centers. You know, like they're a property management company at this time. Yes, they still operate their Pizza Huts and Taco Bells, but I've had clients that had locations inside strip centers that these other guys, the other client, own, you know? I mean, it's giant business. And they're just selling tacos and pizzas, guys. And they did that because they could execute the plan of the franchise, right?
Yeah. So everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but very few people are actually suited to be true entrepreneurs, where they come up with an idea, they create the system around it, they execute on that, they innovate, they make it better, and then they run their own thing that they created. Most people aren't that person. That's a very rare, small percentage of the population. But if you're just like passionate, willing to work hard, and willing to execute on a plan that somebody else made that we already know works, that's a much larger percentage of the population. That's why so many businesses fail, is because most people they don't have the business smarts and the skills and the experience to really get from 0 to 100. But with franchising, you start at 50, right? And so it's I don't know. I can see the difference, and it's so popular to say I'm a starter of my own business. But you know, the shoebox business under your bed doesn't really count, but people still want to say they run a business. So it's cool now to be an entrepreneur, where it didn't used to be. It used to be crazy if you were an entrepreneur.
Sure. And you know, I would just tag on to that too, because like in our last company, we were a software company, but we did something completely different, consulting workflow. But every time, like there's so many personality tests out there in the world. And I would suggest that if you really want to be an entrepreneur, that you go seek out one of those personality tests online and go take it. Because here's the other thing. You can't turn a non-entrepreneur into an entrepreneur. You cannot do it. There were so many times in our like business history, and me and my business partner have been together since like 2009, right? It's almost 15 years now, and 2 companies. And where we would go, hey, look, you're really good at this. We're going to turn this into like a sub business within the business. And all you got to do is kind of run with this just a little bit, and you'll get a huge percentage of whatever we sell and blah, blah, blah. And not a single person ever took us up on it. Like, because you can't take a person who's not like an entrepreneur and just turn them into an entrepreneur. And so if you want to own your own business, but you're not the creative type and you're not willing to stay up and pull 24-hour-a-day shifts for a while and, you know, and take all this risk that comes with that, then you should go execute a franchise, because they're going to give you a plan and they're going to give you structure that you need to execute a business, right? So it is a good deal.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Well, cool, man. This has been a great conversation. We're coming up to our war story time. War stories are just one of those I can't believe we got through it moments, in our work history. It doesn't have to be from this company, but just one of those, oh my God, it was the worst, but like this is what we learned, kind of, or it was funny or whatever, right? You got one for me?
Oh, yeah, I've started a couple of businesses on my own too, so I'll share a good one. But this is from an e-commerce business. So my wife and I years ago started an e-commerce business to pay off medical bills for our oldest boy who went through cancer treatments, and it went surprisingly well, really fast. But we ran into this. I'll share the funny one. But running e-commerce businesses is challenging because it's easy to get in, but that means it's also low barrier for others to enter and then compete with you. And we standardized years ago, like on the Amazon platform. A lot of people have now. A lot of people are using other platforms. It's fine, doesn't matter. But that's what we were doing, and quickly scaled. Well, I had a creative idea because it's all about scarcity, right? E-commerce, if you want to be successful, it's about regional scarcity. Some people are willing to pay $10 for a box of checks that I could go buy at my grocery store for $3, and there's a way to make money in that world. But I'd realized that there were like Girl Scout cookies you can only get certain times of the year. So I found a couple of Girl Scout cookie booths, bought them all. I'm like, hey, how many cookies do you guys have to sell? And they're like, oh, we got like 70 boxes. I'm like, what if I bought all of them? Can I buy all of them for $3 instead of $5? And they're like, heck yeah, we don't want to stand out here and wave our signs. So I bought a bunch of Girl Scout cookies, put them in the Amazon warehouses, and I was like, I'm going to kill this. Well, I did actually for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then I didn't realize that they had a policy about chocolate. So they will not, if you guys don't know this, Amazon will not ship chocolate from it's like Labor Day or like a Memorial Day to Labor Day. They just won't ship it.
Oh, because it gets too hot.
It melts, yeah. And so it's actually, I think, May until October or something like that. So anyway, I get this notice in the mail and like, hey, or not in the mail, just an email, like the notice that, hey, your inventory has gone inactive. And I was like, well, that's a nightmare if you're an entrepreneur. So I looked it up. I had a couple $1,000 tied up in Girl Scout cookie inventory. And then I got the notice and I looked at it. And so I said, ship them all to my house. They're like, we're either going to put them in a dumpster or we can ship them back to you. So then I ended up having like hundreds of boxes of Girl Scout cookies in my house, but because I didn't pay attention to regulatory rules, right? And that's actually kind of the funny part, but it's also like the learning lesson is if you're in an industry with any regulation whatsoever, you got to understand it because there's going to come a point where you're going to get a bunch of Girl Scout cookies shipped back to your house, or worse, you're going to get a letter from the IRS, or worse, you're going to get somebody else, some other regulatory groups, OSHA is going to come visit you, right? So it's just a lesson to me of learn the regulations in the industry that I'm in so I can make sure I'm protecting myself and my assets. That could have been a $30,000 mistake. It was really only about a $2,500 mistake. And frankly, I could eat the asset. So it worked out fine. But yeah, I've got tons, like ClientTether, tons of war stories, right? Lessons learned, things we tried. I'll share just a generic one, but like we are a great platform, like better than most when we're doing what we're better than most at. And something I learned early on is just don't go down that road of trying to create something unique that you're not great at for somebody else. We did that with somebody. I won't share the name of the brand. It was not even a franchise brand, but they found us and like, look, you guys have got everything that we want and more. And could you guys help us with this funky little thing? And we're like, you know what? That's not really that big. You always get lured into it because they minimize what it is. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we went down this rabbit hole of like 6 months, 8 months of custom development. Every time, like, hey, we've completed the scope. They're like, yes, but that's not quite what we need. We need a little bit more. And then finally, we got to the point where they were like, hey, we were both looking at each other across the table saying, we've made a mistake. Like you don't really want what you said you wanted. You want a Cadillac, and you said you wanted like a spare tire, right? Like, and so we ended up just parting ways. But you got to be careful, and you also have to be honest. Like, always honest. That's my key in operating a business. So we talked to them, and they talked to us. We're both like, this isn't a good fit. And so we high-fived and we left. And they're still, I'm guessing, trying to find that magic bullet that they'll never find because it doesn't exist.
That's a funny story. So my last company was a workflow consulting business. So workflow is like, it's like if you were to build a website, like with a website builder, you like drag a picture on, and then behind it, it writes the Java, the HTML code to put your picture there. Workflow is kind of the same way it is, but you do business processes with it. So it's like you get to say, hey, I want to create a form, and then you create a form, and then it writes all the HTML and .NET behind it to do that. And then, you take the form, you push it over, all that stuff. But we always worked with, we would always be working at kind of the director level in these big companies. And so we would get in there, and then they would hire us to come in and like connect these two systems together, or to build a workflow so that somebody could request this thing. And then, it would go to IT and they would provision it, all this kind of stuff. But we always would work with these director level guys. And the problem was they weren't IT project manager or people who had scoped software anymore. And they always saw this project as their way to become a VP, director to VP. I'm going to build this project, and then everyone's going to see how smart I am. And I brought all this value to the company, and I'm going to get promoted, which I totally get. That's a great idea. But because they had no discipline, and what we would end up running into, and also our guys were like consultants / developers. So people would come to us and go, hey, well, could you go in and change that to be like this? And like, they would go, sure. But what they were saying is technically, yes, I can do that. But what they were actually agreeing to was that they would do it functionality wise. And so then, and that was a huge problem we would run into. And so we always had to like try to train them. Hey, yeah, we got to put that into a change order, but we can do it because everybody wants everything if it's free. But as soon as a change order is involved in it, it's not that important. It's a must-have when it was free, but it's, when you're going to charge them for it, it's not that thing. But it was the same deal, man. Like, I would say 80% of those projects ended like this. I guess we're done. Like, they were never like wonderful. They were never wonderful, and they were never wonderful because our guys were really bad at saying, no, you can't do this, or we could do this, but not now, later, and we have to put a change order in. And it was really bad because those guys on the other end thought that you had to make software that did every little thing in the world, and didn't realize that something that's actually simple, that works, that does require you to do a little bit of manual maybe here and there, is actually a million times better than something that you've tried to anticipate the need at every level. Because the issue is you're only thinking of one use case, and the human brain can't look at all the different use cases of the world, right? So it just ends up being, but it was a very similar thing. We would just stop and go, okay, I guess we're all done now. Thanks. Bye. After 9 months of hell. Horrible.
Yeah. I've got one to add. This is actually a partner of ours that I had this conversation with, but they came to me a while back, like, hey, we need to talk about your rate you're paying us for this service, because you're overutilizing what we planned on by a long shot, by 3x. And so we need to probably 3x your bill. And I was like, hold on. Like, first of all, great partner. Like, I have zero interest in terminating the relationship, but it kind of came out of nowhere. And what it really boiled down to is they're creative and they're fun. And they were like saying, hey, what if we do this? What if we do that? And I was like, sure. All right, let's do it. Like, they were coming to the table with these ideas, and there was no control in place for them to say, Dave, and this is the reason I want to share this, because if in your world, in that example, or in a lot of people's worlds, this is a very relevant skill that you need to develop, which is if the scope's changing on something, you need to be able to say, look, that's a great idea. We can do that. Here's what it's going to take. It's going to take this much resource, either money, time, whatever. And if we do that, we either need to charge you this much to get it done, or we need to go over to this list of priorities we've already set and then take that one out, throw it away, plug this one in. You, customer, please decide, what would you like? Do you want to reprioritize, take that one out, put this one in for no cost, or do you want to pay more and add to the scope of the project? But the customer's always got to make the decision. So here I'm like coaching my partner, hey, you need to do this with me. If you're going to bring stuff up in meetings, or if I'm going to ask you for something and you say yes, and don't also say, but I have to not do this because I'm going to do that, Dave, then we got a problem. And so it's a process management issue, but it's not that hard. But some people just want to please, but they're not willing to defend their own payroll, right? Their own bottom line. They've got to be careful with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's why we're in a SaaS business today, because I couldn't deal with the consulting anymore. I couldn't. It's much more interesting to build one thing and make it great over a long period of time than to every 6 to 8 months to a year be building something completely new and going through that rigmarole, So anyway, well, Dave, it's been a pleasure. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find your software, and everything? That'd be great.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, ClientTether.com is if you want to go learn about it. Easiest way to reach me is probably LinkedIn. I'm on there pretty regularly, easy to find. Come to events, company, our team's at most of the major industry events. And but you can reach out to me as well directly. LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to do that as well.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And to all you listeners, thank you guys for supporting us. And we will talk soon.